They laughed when he walked in, didn't ask his name, didn't ask why he was there, didn't even see him. Not really, just a black man in a hoodie. And in their world, that meant one thing: you don't belong. But they were wrong, so wrong, because that man, he owned the building they tried to chase him out of. And when he finally said one sentence, just one, the room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed. You've seen stories like this before. On the news, on your feed, in your own life, a black man walks into a space and the room tightens. The glances change. The assumptions settle in before he even speaks. He's not loud. He's not threatening. He's just there. And somehow that's enough to make people nervous, enough to make them suspicious, enough to make them start treating him like the problem, when really he's the one holding the solution they don't see coming. This story isn't just about racism. It's about assumption. It's about silence. And it's about what happens when the quietest person in the room turns out to be the one with the most power. His name is Langston Hayes. To them, he was just another guy in street clothes. No appointment, no suit, no look of money, just a hoodie. Just calm, just present. But what they didn't know was that every step he took across that showroom floor wasn't a visit, it was an audit. And he wasn't there to buy, he was there to watch, to listen, to see how they treated the man they thought was a nobody. What he found: dismissal, disrespect, and a workplace culture built on whispers and shallow smiles. Until he opened his folder, until he dropped the sentence that flipped the entire room upside down. Actually, I own this place. That was it. The room froze. The employees turned pale. The manager scrambled. Because in one breath, he went from invisible to undeniable. But Langston didn't explode. He didn't shout. He didn't fire everyone on the spot. No, he taught. And what he taught that day is a lesson every single one of us needs to hear. If you've ever felt overlooked, this story is for you. If you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, how you dress, or where you're from, this story is yours. Because this isn't just about Langston. It's about every black man who walks into a room and gets judged before he speaks. It's about every quiet voice that holds more wisdom than 1,000 loud mouths. It's about what happens when dignity walks in, disguised in a hoodie, and leaves the whole room different. You've heard stories of power, but this is the story of silent power, the kind that doesn't need to roar, because its presence alone speaks volumes. So don't scroll, don't skip, don't look away, because the moment you do, you'll miss the sentence that changed everything. Click play and see what happened when they laughed at the wrong black man. Langston Hayes pulled his hood over his head as he stepped out of the SUV, the desert heat swirling around him like smoke from a distant fire. The soft crunch of gravel under his sneakers was the only sound greeting him in the rear lot of Silverline Motors. He didn't come for flash, not for attention, just the truth. And truth, he knew, always revealed itself when no one knew they were being watched. The hoodie wasn't just a choice, it was a test. It cloaked the man the world didn't expect to find behind the wheel. Langston moved slow, deliberate, like someone with nothing to prove and everything to observe. In this part of town, appearances were currency, and his hoodie, it was considered a counterfeit bill. But Langston knew something they didn't. Power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply arrives, quietly, like a shadow. Inside the dealership's glass showroom, Laughter flickered like static. Through the tinted windows, Langston could see two salesmen joking near a coffee bar, ties loose, eyes half-lidded with that midday smugness that comes from selling dreams to desperate buyers. He paused at the entrance, looking not at the cars but at the people, noticing how they leaned into each other, how they measured who mattered and who didn't, with one glance. As the automatic doors whooshed open, the cool air of affluence wrapped around him like a challenge. The scent of leather, fresh wax, and polished ego was thick in the air. Langston stepped in, his shoes squeaking softly against the tile. Conversations dipped for a second, just enough to register his presence, then rose again, slightly altered. Not louder, just more aware. A receptionist with stiff posture and a forced smile glanced at him and then away. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. One of the salesmen leaned closer to whisper something, then chuckled beneath his breath. Langston said nothing. His face didn't flinch. He moved past them like a breeze through an open window. Unwelcome, but undeniable. He paused beside a cobalt blue coupe. Sleek, pristine, price tag likely north of $100,000. His fingers hovered near the door handle but didn't touch, just admired. A man doesn't need to grasp what he already owns. And Langston? He wasn't here to shop. He was here to see the rot beneath the polish, and it was already starting to show. From across the showroom, a woman emerged like a headline. Blonde bob, blazer sharp enough to cut, heels clicking like a metronome of control. Monica. Her eyes scanned him with clinical precision, starting at his sneakers and ending at the curve of his hood. She moved with the authority of someone who'd never been told no in a room full of suits. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her tone the exact temperature of ice just starting to crack. Langston met her gaze. Steady, calm. "Just looking," he said simply. That was all it took, her eyebrows lifted by a millimeter. Enough to say noted, enough to label him. Not a buyer, not a somebody, just another hoodie. Monica didn't like ambiguity. She preferred labels, tags, data, boxes to check. And Langston? He didn't fit hers. She shifted her clipboard against her chest like a shield. "Our vehicles start at a higher price point than most," she said casually. "Usually we schedule viewings with serious buyers." Langston tilted his head slightly, letting the words settle. Still, he smiled. "I figured." He moved again, slower now, watching her watch him. Every step was an audition she didn't realize she was giving. Every word she spoke was a reveal, not of his worth, but of hers. Langston leaned over the hood of a sedan, admiring the craftsmanship. Monica flinched. "Sir, we ask that customers avoid leaning on the vehicles." There it was, the shift, the assumption. Langston straightened, hands in his hoodie pocket, silent. He didn't argue, didn't protest. His silence was his mirror, reflecting her discomfort back at her. Monica cleared her throat, stepping forward. "May I ask what kind of car you're looking for?" she asked, hesitation creeping into her voice like a crack in marble. "Something reliable," Langston replied, voice smooth. "Something that doesn't pretend." That answer threw her, not because it was confrontational, but because it wasn't. Monica preferred the entitled or the desperate. They were easier to place. But Langston's calm, it was unreadable, and that unsettled her. She offered a smile, thin, brittle. "We have financing options," she added, "if that's something helpful." Langston raised one brow but said nothing. letting her assumptions marinate. Behind her, one of the junior salesmen smirked, whispered something under his breath. Monica didn't stop him. That, too, was a choice. Langston took another slow walk around the SUV. His reflection gleamed back at him in the door panel. Hood up, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharp. He looked exactly how they wanted to overlook him, and that today was the point. As he moved deeper into the showroom, the murmurs behind him thickened. He wasn't being escorted, but he was being watched, like a stain someone wasn't sure how to clean. Langston passed a couple discussing lease terms. The woman clutched her purse slightly tighter. The man glanced, then looked away. He was used to being invisible, but today wasn't about staying unseen. Every gesture in the room, every twitch of discomfort was a tell. Langston cataloged it all, not with bitterness, with precision. This wasn't personal. This was systemic, woven into fabric and protocol, into who got greeted and who got vetted. Monica returned, a new brochure in hand. "You might want to consider our pre-owned inventory," she said, her voice practiced. "More accessible." Langston took the pamphlet, unfolded it with care. 3 models, all under $20,000. Reliable, safe, modest. He nodded slowly. "These all come with warranties?" Monica hesitated. "Basic ones, yes." He smiled again. "That's good to know." He folded the paper, slid it into his hoodie pocket like a receipt for something she didn't know she'd already sold. Herself. Silence stretched between them. Not hostile, not loud, just present. Monica fidgeted. "Would you like to see the pre-owned lot?" she asked. Langston turned, looked out the glass at the fleet of high-end vehicles glittering under the sun. "In a minute," he said, still getting a feel for the place. Monica nodded tightly. "Of course." Her smile returned, but her eyes didn't follow. Langston stepped back into the center of the room. The floor beneath him reflected the lights above, but none of it reflected the truth in his steps. He stood still, listened, watched, measured. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be exactly who they never saw coming and wear your silence like armor. Outside, the sun had dipped slightly lower, casting long, golden lines across the showroom. Inside, the tension didn't leave. It shifted, like the air before a storm. Monica stepped away, clipboard clutched like a lifeline. Langston turned his head, watching her go. Not with disdain, with understanding. She was playing a role, one she'd rehearsed, one she didn't realize was about to end. He walked slowly between the cars again. Let the space speak. Let the judgment hang. He wasn't here to prove worth. He wasn't here to win approval. He was here to witness, to record, to expose, and maybe, just maybe, to teach. Because behind every hoodie, there's a black story worth telling. Monica returned from the back, her heels clicking like punctuation marks. She didn't expect Langston to still be there, calmly inspecting the rims on a midnight black coupe. Something about his presence irritated her. Too quiet, too composed. She'd dealt with time wasters before, but this one felt like he wasn't playing by the script. "Still browsing?" she asked, tone coated in condescension. Langston nodded. "Still learning." That answer didn't sit well. She stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to sound personal, but loud enough for others to hear. "We don't usually get walk-ins like you." She smiled after the sentence, but it didn't reach her eyes. Langston tilted his head. "Like me?" he asked calmly. Monica's lips twitched. "You know what I mean." That was the first strike. Subtle, coded, easy to deny. But Langston didn't need clarity. He'd seen this dance before. Monica took another step, standing between Langston and the next vehicle. We usually deal with clientele who have appointments, verifiable references, banking connections, people who understand the kind of showroom this is. She delivered it like policy, not prejudice. Langston smiled faintly. I'm here to understand, he said. She blinked. Her mouth opened, but the words didn't form fast enough. He disarmed her without raising a voice. Behind them, one of the junior sales reps, Eli, fresh out of some business program, laughed from his desk. He needs directions to the used car lot, Monica, he called out, chuckling. Monica didn't correct him. Another choice, another brushstroke in the portrait they were painting of who belonged and who didn't. Langston turned toward Eli. You think I'm lost? Eli grinned. Just trying to help, boss. He emphasized that last word with venom wrapped in sarcasm. Langston didn't take the bait. Instead, he looked back at Monica. Do your reps always talk to potential customers that way? Monica bristled. He didn't mean anything by it. Didn't he? Langston asked. Or didn't you stop him because you agreed? She opened her mouth to object, then paused. No one had ever said that to her. Not here. Not in her showroom. The second strike had landed, this time from him. Another customer, a white man in a navy polo, walked in. Monica perked up. Welcome to Silverline, sir, she called out, voice shifting from cold to warm in a single breath. Langston watched the change with clinical precision. The new customer got the tour guide treatment, full of smiles and open body language. Langston? He was still standing beside the black coupe like it owed him an apology. Eli glanced over, muttered, Dude's been here for 30 minutes and hasn't even asked about financing. Monica shrugged. He's just window shopping. Langston caught every word, didn't flinch. He stepped away from the car and began slowly circling the center aisle. Every step was deliberate. He wasn't here to match their energy. He was here to make them reveal theirs. And they were doing it, line by line. Monica circled back, clipboard in hand. I can print you a few options in your range, she offered. Might help streamline things. Langston smiled. My range, she faltered. Just assuming, based on your interest. The pause before the last word betrayed her discomfort. Langston let it sit. Maybe don't assume, he said. The air shifted, slightly. Just enough that Monica stiffened, gripping the clipboard tighter. He walked past a sleek convertible. Monica followed, desperate to reassert control. Listen, she said, softer now. We deal with a very particular clientele. Doctors, CEOs, ball players, folks who are serious. Langston turned to her. And I'm not serious? Her voice wavered. That's not what I said. No, he said, but it's what you meant. The words dropped like a quiet hammer. Monica blinked. In the corner, Eli chuckled again, louder this time. Relax, Monica, he said. Dude's just here to sit in some leather. Langston turned, walked toward him slowly. The room quieted. Say that again, Langston said calmly. Eli shrugged. Come on, man, it's a joke. Chill. Langston didn't blink. You know what's funny? Eli leaned back, arms crossed. What? Langston smiled. You think you're the one running the joke. Monica stepped between them. Okay, let's not escalate. Langston raised a hand, not in threat, in calm. No escalation, just observation. He looked at Eli, then Monica. I've been here for half an hour. No one offered me water. No one gave me specs. Just side eyes and assumptions. Monica's face flushed. Eli snorted. Man, you're too sensitive. No, Langston replied. I'm just not used to being underestimated so openly. Monica reached for control again. Look, why don't we start over? She said. Let me walk you through our standard intake. Credit check, ID, employment verification. Langston smiled faintly. Do you start all your tours like that? Monica hesitated. Only when necessary. And who decides what's necessary? He asked. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Because she already had. And Langston had made her realize it. A new couple walked in, white, mid-30s, designer sneakers. Monica perked up again. Be right with you, she called out. Langston stepped back, giving her room. It's fine, he said. Go help the ones who look like they can afford it. The words weren't bitter. They were precise. She flinched again, but turned away anyway. Priorities. She made her choice. Langston stood near the entrance, the hum of the AC and muffled voices building around him like static. He felt the eyes again, not curious, not interested, just waiting for him to leave, just hoping he'd fade into the sidewalk like a bad reflection. But Langston wasn't leaving. Not yet. Not until the final assumption had been made. Not until their arrogance wrote the last line of the story themselves. He walked slowly back toward the front desk. Monica returned. I've printed a list of certified pre-owned models you might qualify for. She said it like a peace offering. He took it, read the list. 2 sedans, 1 hybrid, all 10 years old. These are your recommendations? He asked. For someone like me? She nodded, eyes cautious now. Yes, we try to be realistic. Langston folded the paper again, slipped it into his hoodie pocket. Good, he said softly. Realism's important. He turned. Helps people see exactly who they're dealing with. Monica didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. The strike was complete, polished, executed, and they didn't even know they'd thrown it. Langston walked back toward the black coupe, rested his hand lightly on the fender. Someone near the service counter stared. Monica didn't stop him this time, because she felt it now. The balance had shifted, slightly, but enough. Enough to make her wonder who he really was. Enough to realize this wasn't just a hoodie, it was a mirror, and it was showing her things she didn't want to see. Langston stood in the center of the showroom, his hoodie slightly catching the overhead lights as he moved. The floor beneath him gleamed like a stage, and he knew the performance wasn't over. Monica had left him to speak with the new couple, but her eyes kept flicking back, watching, measuring, like a scientist who couldn't make the specimen behave. Langston made no effort to please. That in itself was its own rebellion. Eli leaned against a display counter, whispering to another rep named Devin. Both chuckled as they looked over at Langston. Guy's probably going to ask to test drive a Lambo next, Eli sneered, barely bothering to lower his voice. Devin laughed harder than he needed to. The words floated across the room like smoke, sharp and toxic. Langston heard it all, chose silence. But his silence wasn't surrender. It was surveillance. A customer, older man in khakis and a Rolex, stood nearby looking uncomfortable. He noticed the tension but said nothing, just clutched the keys the dealer had handed him and slipped toward the lot. Monica returned holding a small silver iPad. I checked our system, she announced, voice louder than necessary, and unfortunately, we don't have anything currently available in your bracket. Every syllable delivered like a nail into a coffin. Langston raised an eyebrow. My bracket? He asked softly. Monica paused. Yes, based on what we've discussed. They hadn't discussed anything, but the room wasn't listening to that detail. They were listening to the volume, to the performance, and Monica had made him the centerpiece of it. Eli leaned forward grinning. Told you, just another looky-loo. Langston stood still, letting it all unfold. Another salesman passed by carrying 2 lattes for a client and gave Langston a once-over before shaking his head with a smirk. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His expression was an echo of everything already said. Monica held out a pre-printed flyer, used vehicles, deep discounts, outdated models. If anything opens up closer to what you might be able to manage, we'll give you a call. She didn't ask for a number. Langston took the paper, folded it once. He said, voice level. Didn't realize ambition was so measurable from across a showroom. Monica blinked, caught off guard by the grace in his tone. He wasn't flustered, wasn't angry, and that rattled her more than if he had been. Around them, the other employees stopped pretending to work. This was a show now, and Langston was their unwilling star. A voice from the back, a manager perhaps, called out for Monica. She stepped away, and that's when Eli walked up. Listen, man, he began, voice dripping with mock sympathy. These cars aren't for everyone. It's not personal. Langston turned to face him. That's the problem, he replied. You think disrespect isn't personal. Eli scoffed, glancing at the others like Langston had just proven his point. Then, as if on cue, Eli reached into a side drawer behind the counter and pulled out a promotional cap, a giveaway from some summer sale event. Here, he said, tossing it toward Langston. At least take a souvenir. The cap landed on the floor between them. The room went still. No one laughed, not even Devin, because the line had been crossed, and they all felt it. Langston didn't look at the hat, didn't pick it up, just looked Eli in the eye. The tension grew, thick as smoke in a locked room. Eli shifted, suddenly unsure. It was a joke, he muttered, but even he didn't believe it. Langston didn't speak, didn't blink, just turned his back and walked away, slow and measured, toward the far wall lined with luxury convertibles. A woman near the service desk whispered to her husband, Did you see that? That guy just took that humiliation like it was nothing. Her husband replied, Maybe he's used to it. But neither of them looked proud for saying it. They just turned their eyes away like everyone else who'd watched and done nothing. Monica returned, saw the hat, saw the faces, knew something had shifted. What happened? She asked. Eli shrugged, avoiding her gaze. Langston was at the far end of the showroom now, standing beside a pearl-white sports car, fingers lightly tracing the edge of the side mirror. The silence that surrounded him wasn't discomfort. It was power coiled tight, waiting. A young intern approached Monica nervously. Should I offer him water or a catalog? Monica stared at Langston's back, unsure. No, she said. Let him be. It was the first time she admitted, if only to herself, that she didn't know what game she was playing anymore. Langston wasn't reacting the way he was supposed to, and that made him dangerous. Langston finally turned back toward the center of the showroom. The room parted for him, not physically but energetically. People moved out of his path, not out of respect, out of uncertainty. They didn't know what to expect anymore. The man in the hoodie wasn't folding. He was unfolding. And every step he took was a reminder that dignity doesn't need volume to be heard. A security guard near the glass door shifted uneasily. He hadn't been told to intervene, but he was watching, closely. because that's what they did when a black man didn't follow the expected script. When he refused to play meek or mad. When he walked like he knew something they didn't. Langston reached the front desk again. Monica stood there, the silver iPad still in her hands like a shield. "If you'd like to leave your info," she started. "That won't be necessary," Langston said, cutting her off. "But gently. You've told me everything I needed to hear." She opened her mouth to ask what that meant, but the words died there, because deep down she already knew. He walked past her slowly, every step like punctuation at the end of a sentence no one else could write. Monica watched him go, clipboard trembling slightly in her grasp. The room, once filled with casual judgment and whispers, now stood wrapped in silence, and not the kind they could control. This was his silence, and it echoed louder than they were ready for. Langston reached the glass doors, paused, looked over his shoulder one last time. Not for validation, not for drama, just acknowledgement. A quiet reminder that he'd been here, seen everything, and chosen grace over vengeance. He pushed the door open and stepped into the heat, Hoodie casting a shadow long behind him. But inside that showroom, the shame didn't follow him. It stayed behind, on every tongue that stayed silent, every eye that looked away. Langston stepped outside the dealership, the heat clinging to his hoodie like judgment. He stood by his SUV, hands deep in his pockets, breathing steady. It wasn't the insults that stayed with him, it was the casualness, the ease with which they dismissed him. No malice, no hesitation, just a reflex. That's what cut deepest. And now he'd seen enough. The mask of politeness had slipped. It was time to show them who they were really dealing with. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a black leather folder. Inside, ownership documents, corporate communications, and a note from his lawyer confirming transfer of power. Langston flipped the folder open, reviewed it slowly, then shut it with finality. The moment had arrived, not for revenge, but for revelation. He didn't need to yell. He only needed to walk back through those glass doors and let the truth do the talking. Inside the dealership, Eli tossed a pen from hand to hand like he'd already won something. "Man really thought he was going to walk out of here in a Benz," he joked to Devin, who chuckled weakly but avoided eye contact. Monica overheard. She didn't laugh. Not this time. Something about the way Langston looked at her earlier had stuck. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was quiet judgment, and it unsettled her. She returned to her desk, glancing at her phone. A calendar reminder flashed across the screen. "New owner site visit. To be determined." She clicked on the email thread attached. Her brow furrowed. The sender name glowed. Langston Hayes Holdings. She blinked, clicked again. That name, Langston, the man from earlier. She shot up from her chair, pulse rising. "Eli," she called, voice tight. "You remember his name?" Eli shrugged. "Langston something. Why?" Monica's throat went dry. She opened the company directory, typed in Langston Hayes. There it was. Owner, primary shareholder, acquired 3 West Coast branches last quarter. She leaned back, color draining from her face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The man they'd laughed at owned the entire building. She suddenly felt naked beneath the fluorescent lights and guilty for everything she hadn't said and everything she had. Outside, Langston exhaled one final time, then stepped back toward the showroom. His sneakers crunched against the walkway. The automatic doors opened with a soft whoosh. Conversations halted. Eyes turned. And in that moment, the air changed. Not because he looked different, but because they finally saw him. Not the hoodie, not the shoes, the presence, the purpose. He walked slowly, letting their shame catch up to their silence. He stopped in the middle of the showroom floor, right beside the black coupe they said he couldn't touch. Monica approached hesitantly. "Sir," she said, voice shaking, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Langston tilted his head. "There has, but not mine." He reached into his folder, pulled out the deed and held it out to her. Her hands trembled as she read it. The color drained from her face again. Eli stepped forward, trying to salvage control. "Look, man, we didn't know." Langston looked at him. "You didn't ask." The silence landed like a verdict. Devin stopped pretending to work and slowly backed toward the parts counter. Monica opened her mouth, still scanning the page. "You're the new owner?" she whispered. Langston didn't answer. He didn't have to. The document in her hands said everything. He stepped toward the reception desk, placing his folder down slowly, deliberately. "I came in here yesterday as a test," he said, voice low, firm. "No cameras, no warning, just me. Just a black man in a hoodie, and what I got wasn't service. It was a mirror." Monica looked like she wanted to cry, but Langston's face didn't flinch. "Now that the mirror's cracked, let's see what's behind it." Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Another dropped a pen, but Langston kept speaking, steady as stone. "You didn't just treat me like I didn't belong. You treated me like I was beneath you. And worse, you felt nothing doing it. That's what made it so dangerous. You weren't angry. You were indifferent. And that's the kind of poison that rots a place from the inside out." Eli tried again, his voice more desperate now. "We didn't mean to disrespect you." Langston raised an eyebrow. "You didn't mean to, but you did. That's the problem." He looked around the room. "Every laugh, every assumption, every time you look through me, not at me, that's culture. Not a bad day, not a misunderstanding, a pattern." The words echoed through the walls like a fire alarm. He stepped toward the display table, picked up the same flyer Monica had handed him yesterday, the one with entry-level models. "You chose this for me," he said, holding it up. "Not because of my credit score, not because of my history, but because of your bias. And if I hadn't owned this place, you'd have been proud of it." Monica's lips quivered, but no defense came. Langston looked at the rest of the staff. No one met his gaze. "This isn't about me. I'll be fine. But what about the next kid who walks in here dressed like me? What happens to them?" The room stayed quiet. "I'll tell you, you'll dismiss them, like you did me, and they'll walk away thinking it was their fault, like they were the problem. That ends today." He walked slowly toward the door, then stopped. "Monica," he said without turning around. She jumped. Yes? You're not fired yet, but you're on notice. And you'll be reporting to someone who sees people, not profiles." He turned to Eli. "Same goes for you." Eli nodded quickly, face pale. Devin stayed silent, praying not to be called. Langston looked at him anyway. "Don't worry, I saw your silence too." He pulled the door open but paused. "I'm bringing in new hiring policies, anonymous reviews, internal audits, and monthly visits from mystery shoppers. One of them might be wearing a hoodie. Treat them how you treated me, and you'll see the door before they do." His voice was still calm, but now it carried weight, authority, consequence, and no one in the building doubted him again. Langston stepped into the sunlight. The air outside felt cooler now, though the desert heat still pulsed off the pavement. He didn't smile, didn't look back. Some victories didn't need celebration, just closure. Behind him, the glass door swung shut. Inside, the weight of his presence remained, pressing on every wall, every desk, every name badge that once dismissed him. Because the line had been crossed, and Langston had drawn a new one they'd never forget. Langston sat alone at the head of the glass table, hoodie on, elbows resting lightly beside a stack of manila folders. The boardroom stretched wide, modern, cold, like the decisions that had shaped it. Behind the tinted glass wall, the showroom bustled with ignorance. But in here, power had pulled up a chair, and it wasn't shouting, it was waiting for the room to catch up to what it had overlooked. He didn't start with introductions, didn't ask for credentials. Everyone around the table already knew who he was. They just didn't know he was that man, until now. The regional manager, the HR head, two VPs from the East Coast division, all dressed sharp, all suddenly cautious. Langston let the silence sit a little longer, like a fog they were forced to walk through. Then he finally spoke. Calm, director, deadly. Earlier today, he began, I walked into this building unannounced, dressed like a customer, no driver, no appointment. His eyes scanned the room. Not one person asked me how they could help, but they did tell me what I couldn't afford. A flicker of discomfort passed through the VP's face. Langston continued, I stood beside a car I bought with cash last year and watched an associate laugh at me like I was invisible. He opened one of the folders, laying out a stack of printed complaint emails, each highlighted in yellow. Here's what your culture breeds, he said. Assumption, arrogance, and silence when it matters most. He didn't yell, didn't jab his finger at anyone. His voice was low, measured, almost gentle, but every syllable carried the weight of consequence. If I hadn't owned this company, I'd have walked away today. Just another black man dismissed in a hoodie. The HR director cleared her throat. We've done sensitivity training, she said carefully, quarterly, with third-party oversight. Langston nodded. Good. And yet your employees are still fluent in coded disrespect. He didn't blink. That's not a training failure. That's a leadership failure. One of the East Coast VPs shifted in his seat. We had no idea this location had degraded to this point. Langston raised an eyebrow. You didn't know, or didn't look. He rose from his chair slowly. The soft sound of fabric stretching under his hoodie seemed louder than their excuses. You want to know how people really behave? He said, walking toward the window. Take away the name tag. Take away the power. Walk in like you have nothing. He turned back to them. That's when they show you who they are. No one responded, because every single one of them knew he was right. Outside, the sunlight hit the SUV just right, reflecting against the glass wall of the boardroom. Langston stared at the reflection, not of himself, but of the place he had built, the brand he had carried. This isn't about cars, he said. It's about character, and we're bankrupt. The silence returned, thicker now, swollen with guilt. Some looked down, others fidgeted with their pens. But Langston, he never broke eye contact. He returned to his seat and opened a second folder. 3 of our black employees have filed informal concerns in the last 6 months. Not a single one escalated. Why? His eyes flicked to the HR director. Because they knew nothing would happen, and they were right. She swallowed hard. I'll reopen the investigations. No, Langston said. You'll replace yourself, starting tomorrow. No one challenged him. His tone made argument impossible. Downstairs, Monica stood behind the reception desk like a statue. She watched customers come and go, but her mind wasn't in the room. It was upstairs, trapped in the boardroom, with every lie she'd ever told herself about fairness. She'd judged him, laughed behind his back, tossed a sales flyer like a bone. And now, that man in the hoodie was rewriting the rules she thought she'd mastered. Langston looked around the boardroom again. "This isn't a purge," he said. "It's a reckoning." He tapped the folders. "These are not just numbers. They're names. People who walked through our doors and left feeling smaller." His voice dropped even lower. "I've felt that too many times in my life. I won't let this company become another place where it happens." The executives stayed quiet, because what could they say? "Sorry?" He pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it down the table. "This is a revised code of conduct. It includes equity benchmarks, mandatory bias reviews, anonymous escalation channels, and monthly audits." He leaned forward slightly. "And I expect it to be implemented in every location, starting with this one." The VP nodded quickly, almost too eagerly. "Of course, we'll make it happen." Langston didn't smile. He just watched. "Don't make it happen because I asked you to," he said. "Make it happen because it's right. Because the next customer who walks in wearing what I wore today," his voice grew razor sharp, "they might not own the building, but they still deserve respect." That line landed like a gavel strike. Someone took a breath to respond, then thought better of it. He stood again, this time walking to the glass door. "This meeting is over," he said, not as a suggestion. "Expect the transition plan in your inbox by morning." And just like that, Langston walked out, hoodie still on, shoulders still square. He didn't slam the door. That wasn't his style. He let the silence follow him like a bodyguard, loyal and feared. As he walked back through the showroom, employees parted like water around stone. No one made eye contact. Monica stood up instinctively, almost wanting to apologize, almost desperate to rewind time. But Langston didn't stop, didn't glance her way. He'd already given her something more powerful than scolding. He'd given her reflection, and it was up to her what she did with it. Outside, the wind had picked up. Langston opened the door of his SUV and paused. He looked once more at the glass building behind him, the same one that had once dismissed him in silence. That silence now belonged to him, not as a wound, but as a weapon, and he intended to use it for change, starting today. He slid into the driver's seat, pulled his hoodie tight, and started the engine. No music, no call, just the hum of control. As he backed out of the lot, a junior employee opened the door to wave. Langston nodded once through the window. Not a smile, just acknowledgement, a signal that not everyone had failed the test. Some still had time to learn. As the SUV merged into the flow of traffic, the dealership behind him faded in the rearview mirror. But its echo stayed, not in the building, but in the people. Because when the man in the hoodie walks in again, they'll know better. Or they'll find out, too late, that power doesn't need a suit. Sometimes it comes in silence, stitched into cotton, worn by the underestimated, and it never forgets. The email hit Monica's inbox at 6:47 a.m., sharp the next morning. The subject line read, "Performance Review, Immediate Action Required." No greetings, no fluff, just a list of bullet points detailing specific complaints, behavioral violations, and a request for her to meet with internal counsel. Her hands trembled as she scrolled, each sentence burning into her chest. By the time she reached the last line, pending suspension effective immediately, she already knew. Her fall had begun. Eli arrived 10 minutes late as usual. He walked in sipping iced coffee, grinning like it was any other morning. Then he saw the envelope on his desk, HR letterhead, his name in bold. He stared at it for a long second before peeling it open. A warning, formal, scathing, signed by corporate. The words inside made his smirk collapse. His first instinct was to protest, but deep down, he already knew he'd written every word himself. Throughout the showroom, the energy had shifted. Phones rang, but voices were low. No music played from the Bluetooth speakers. Even Devin, who usually cracked jokes while printing contracts, stayed quiet. Everyone had seen what happened yesterday, and now they were witnessing the aftershock. Langston hadn't needed cameras or lawyers. He'd needed only one thing: truth. And it had landed harder than any headline ever could. Ava Simmons walked in just before 9. Clean khakis, modest blouse, braided hair tucked behind her ear. She wasn't surprised when her name was called into the manager's office. But this time, she didn't feel dread. She sat across from the interim GM and listened as he read a prepared statement. Effective immediately, she'd be promoted to full-time senior consultant. Langston's recommendation had been personal. Quiet strength, he'd written. Underestimated, just like me. Monica packed her things in silence. No one approached her. No one offered help. Yesterday, she had ruled this floor. Today, her badge didn't even open the staff restroom. She placed her favorite mug, Boss Lady, in gold lettering, into a small cardboard box and looked one last time at the reception desk. How many people had she dismissed from that chair? How many names had she never bothered to learn? Eli hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. He finally muttered, "Guess this place got soft." Ava passed him without stopping. Or maybe it just got real. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the air like a blade. Devin looked up from his monitor. "They're reviewing every location," he said quietly. "Langston's not playing." Eli sank into his chair. "He's really going to clean house, huh?" Devin nodded. "House, garage, front lawn, all of it." In the upstairs office, Langston watched through the blinds. Hoodie still on, coffee untouched beside him. He saw Ava carry her new nameplate to the sales floor, watched Monica disappear behind a closing door, watched Eli stare into nothing. The consequences weren't just corrections, they were revelations. He hadn't just disrupted a workplace, he'd cracked open a facade. And what spilled out? That was on them. The regional VP called midday. "We've already received 6 customer emails praising the shift in tone. You're making waves." Langston responded coolly, "Waves don't matter. I want roots. Waves fade. Roots grow." The VP stammered something about PR. Langston wasn't listening. His eyes were back on the floor below, watching, measuring, ensuring the rot had stopped bleeding into the foundation. By 3 p.m., 3 more staff members had received disciplinary notices. Not for yesterday, but for the culture they had helped breed. Langston didn't believe in scapegoats. He believed in accountability. If you watched it happen and said nothing, you were part of the echo, and echoes, like habits, needed to be broken. Loudly, permanently. A corporate email went out to all Silverline branches nationwide. Subject: the Hoodie Standard. Inside, it detailed new training programs, hiring audits, anonymous feedback lines, and mandatory in-field mystery visits. Every executive was required to sign it. The attached image was of Langston standing in front of a dealership, hoodie on, eyes forward. Caption read, "If you wouldn't treat him with respect, don't treat anyone." By evening, social media had caught wind. A former employee tweeted, "The man in the hoodie owns the whole damn lot. Respect walked in quiet," and flipped the script. It went viral. Thousands of retweets, a surge in followers, articles were written, think pieces drafted. But Langston didn't read any of it. That wasn't why he did it. The internet was noise. He was after something deeper, something lasting. That night, Monica sat in her kitchen, staring at her boxed-up nameplate. Her inbox had 20 unread messages, half from HR, half from friends who had seen the headline. But she didn't answer any of them. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was from her father. "What happened?" She didn't reply, because there was no excuse that didn't also expose her truth. And truth she was learning didn't care about intentions. Eli sat in his car long after the dealership closed. He hadn't spoken to anyone, hadn't even clocked out. Just sat there replaying every moment, every smirk, every jab, every time he'd look through someone instead of at them. For the first time, he wondered if he was the punchline in his own joke. For the first time, he wasn't laughing. Langston walked the showroom at closing, alone, slow. He stopped at the same black coupe he'd touched the day before. This time, no one interrupted. He ran his hand across the hood again, not to admire it, but to remember it. The moment, the silence, the disregard, and the choice he made to not just forgive, but to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, sharper. He passed the front desk, stopped, sat for a moment in Monica's old chair, felt the grooves in the armrest, the height of the screen, the slight draft from the vent. He sat there not to mock, but to reflect, because power doesn't always come from above. Sometimes it hides in the very seat that once turned people away. Ava entered quietly, holding a report. "All closed," she said. Langston looked up. "And how'd it feel?" She smiled. "Lighter, like something ugly left the building." He nodded. "Good, keep it that way." She hesitated. "Why did you come dressed like that?" Langston looked at her, gaze steady. "Because I wanted the truth. And people tell the truth when they think you're nobody." She didn't respond, just stood beside him, both of them staring out the darkened glass. The street lights outside cast long shadows, but inside the building things had never felt clearer. No suits, no podiums. Just a man in a hoodie and a woman who earned her place, not by speaking loud, but by standing firm. As they turned out the lights, Langston paused once more. He looked back at the empty showroom, the echo of yesterday still faint in the corners. Then he stepped outside, hoodie up, breath steady. The door clicked shut behind him. But the lesson? That stayed glowing like a sign they'd never forget. Because pride falls fast, but dignity walks out slow, silent, unshaken, and always in a hoodie. Langston returned the next morning before the dealership opened. The sky was still painted in soft orange, and the lot was silent except for the buzz of early light. He walked past the glass door, no longer a ghost, but a presence that reshaped the air around him. No suit, no entourage, just the hoodie, just the man. The janitor mopping the floor looked up, nodded with quiet recognition. Langston nodded back. Respect. It needed no words. Inside, Ava was already prepping her desk. She looked up and smiled. "Morning, Mr. Hayes." Langston smiled back. "Morning, Ava. Just Langston today. That was how he liked it. No titles, just people. Real ones. She handed him a folder with the first round of updated customer feedback since the changes took effect. Most of it's good, she said. Some of it's raw. Langston took it in stride. Raw meant real, and real was the goal. He sat at the conference table and flipped through the reports. A young man, black college freshman, had left a handwritten thank you note. Was ready to be judged. Instead, I got welcomed. Keep doing what you're doing. Langston stared at the words for a long moment, not because he was surprised, but because he remembered what it felt like to be that kid. He folded the paper gently, tucked it into his notebook. Later that day, the staff gathered for their first mandatory cultural accountability meeting. Some arrived stiff, arms crossed. Others slouched, clearly skeptical. Langston stood at the front of the room, still in his hoodie, marker in hand. No podium, no clicker, just presence. I'm not here to lecture, he began. I'm here because I was you, and yesterday you were me. And what happened between us? That's the problem. He paced slowly, voice steady. You didn't know who I was, and yet every decision you made was confident, assured. You assumed I couldn't afford a car. You assumed I didn't belong. But what I saw was something deeper. You assumed I wouldn't fight back. The room was silent, not embarrassed, not defensive, just exposed. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked straight at him. That's when the lesson began. Langston wrote 3 words on the whiteboard. Dignity, discomfort, discipline. Then he turned. Dignity is what you owe every human being who walks through those doors. Discomfort is what you feel when that truth challenges your habits. Discipline is what it takes to choose respect even when no one's watching. The room didn't move. It absorbed. Because for once, these weren't corporate slogans. They were lived realities. He continued, bias isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the extra second you wait before greeting someone. In the fake smile, the side eye, the flyer you accidentally hand someone based on their hoodie. Monica sat in the back staring at the floor, but she didn't leave. That was something. Langston saw her, didn't single her out. He didn't need to. Her presence meant the lesson was sinking in. A hand rose in the corner. It was Devin. How do we fix it? He asked genuinely. Langston nodded. Start by recognizing it. Every day, every customer. Ask yourself, am I seeing the person or the profile? If it's the profile, stop, start over, get uncomfortable, get better. Devin nodded slowly. Around him, others followed. The silence had transformed. No longer heavy. Now it held space. Eli stood up, slowly, uncertain. Yesterday, I was that guy. Loud, stupid. Thought I was being funny. He paused. I wasn't. I was being small. He looked at Langston. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to do better. Langston studied him, then nodded. It starts today. Don't make this about guilt. Make it about growth. The room let out a quiet exhale, like someone had cracked a window. After the meeting, a younger sales associate approached Langston. Never thought someone like you would own a place like this, he said, then hesitated. I mean that as a compliment. Langston smiled, but his eyes stayed sharp. Then make sure the next someone like me you meet doesn't have to own the place to be respected in it. The associate nodded slowly. No excuses, just understanding. Langston walked the lot with Ava that afternoon. They passed 2 teenage boys in oversized hoodies, pressing their faces to the showroom glass. Want to go in? One whispered. They'll just ignore us, the other replied. Langston opened the door. "Come on in," he said warmly. Their eyes lit up. Ava smiled. "We've been waiting for you." The boys stepped inside, wide-eyed. For once, no one made them feel small. They toured the lot, asked questions, sat behind the wheel of a showroom coupe. Eli walked by, hesitated, then smiled. "Nice choice," he said to one of the boys. "Good taste." It was small, but it mattered. Langston watched it happen. One moment, one gesture, the shift had begun. Not in policy, but in people. That's where every real story rewrites itself. That evening, Langston updated the company website. Under the About Us section, he added a new line. "We don't judge clothes, we honor character." He stared at it for a second, then hit publish. Ava peeked over his shoulder. "Simple," she said, "and powerful." Langston nodded. Like every black story they tried to ignore. The screen reflected the text, and beneath it, the faint outline of his hoodie. Monica knocked softly on the office door. "May I?" Langston gestured for her to come in. She sat across from him, fingers nervously clasped. "I'm not proud of how I treated you," she said, "but I'm still here because I want to learn. I want to change." Langston looked at her. "Change doesn't start with apologies. It starts with action." She nodded. "Then I'll act." Langston handed her a booklet. Community Equity Program, Internal Review Edition. "You're leading this," he said, "not because you deserve it, but because you need to earn it." Monica blinked, stunned. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me," Langston said, standing. "Thank the next person who walks in wearing a hoodie and walks out with dignity." Her eyes glistened. This was no redemption arc. This was responsibility. Before closing, Langston took one last walk through the showroom. He stood in the same spot they humiliated him, closed his eyes, breathed in the new air. He didn't hear mocking now. He heard possibility. He didn't feel rage. He felt clarity. Growth wasn't loud. It crept in moment by moment, voice by voice, shift by shift. He turned off the showroom lights, left only one glowing, over the black coupe they once tried to steer him away from. In the parking lot, Langston passed the janitor again. The man smiled. "You shook 'em up good," he said. Langston chuckled. "Sometimes the ground has to shake to make room for something better." They bumped fists. Two men in hoodies, standing in quiet power. Underestimated, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. The sun dipped low, casting a long shadow from the rooftop down to the pavement. Langston watched it stretch, hood up, shoulders square, ready for whatever came next. Because today wasn't just about justice. It was about legacy. A new culture had begun, one built not on titles, but on truth. Not on uniforms, but on understanding. And it all started with a hoodie. The following week, Langston walked past Silverline Motors at sunset, hoodie up, hands in his pockets. He wasn't heading in. Not today. The dealership was running smoothly. Ava had stepped into her new role effortlessly. The tone had changed, and customers noticed. Respect was no longer a currency given sparingly. It was standard. And for the first time in years, Langston could walk past his own business, just to watch it breathe. Inside, Ava guided a Latino couple through financing options with patience and clarity. Eli stood nearby, quieter than usual, but attentive. When their child asked about the convertible near the window, Eli knelt down and said, "You've got good taste. Never let people tell you otherwise." The mother smiled. Ava glanced outside. She saw the silhouette in the hoodie through the glass. She didn't wave. She just smiled. He saw it. That was enough. Langston moved along the sidewalk, past the tinted glass, his reflection trailing beside him like an old friend. The street was calm, the world not so much. But here, in this little corner of change, something had shifted. A truth had been planted, and with time, it would grow. Like every seed that gets buried and dares to bloom where no one expects. He passed a group of high school kids laughing near a crosswalk. One of them wore a hoodie not unlike his, gray, slightly torn, sleeves pushed halfway up. They barely noticed him, just another man in the city haze. But one of them did glance back, a nod exchanged. Not fear, not awe, just mutual understanding. That's how quiet power works. It doesn't beg to be seen. It just walks through the world, differently. The bus stop bench was empty, so Langston sat for a moment, watched the sun sink behind a bank of palm trees. The world still spun. Injustice hadn't vanished. Assumptions still lingered. But in one place, under one roof, something had changed. And maybe, just maybe, that meant it could change elsewhere too. That's all Langston ever wanted. Not perfection, just proof that progress was possible. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Customer today asked if we had any hoodies with the company logo. Might be a thing. Langston chuckled, typing back, only if we add a mirror inside the collar, so people see themselves. She responded with a laughing emoji, then a thumbs up. She got it. She really did. And that meant the work would outlive him. That meant it had weight. Two boys ran past, tossing a football. The younger one stumbled near Langston, wide-eyed. Hey, the boy said, catching his breath. Are you somebody? Langston smiled. Aren't we all? The boy grinned, then darted off after his brother. Langston leaned back, the wind tugging gently at his hoodie. That's what he fought for. Not headlines, just moments like that, where the question wasn't loaded, where presence wasn't questioned. Further down the road, the old diner blinked its neon open sign. Langston headed there, ordered coffee, sat at the corner booth like he used to, long before his name was on documents and people watched his steps. The waitress brought his order without flinching, without assumption. Refills on me, she said. Saw what you did down the street. Took guts. Langston nodded once. Takes more to keep it going. She nodded back. Respect again. Quiet but full. He finished the coffee slowly, paid in cash, left a tip bigger than the bill. Walked back out, Hoodie shielding him from the wind. His phone buzzed again. This time, a video link from Ava. A clip from the showroom. A customer smiling, pointing to a hoodie on a mannequin. Now that's style, the voice said. Langston saved the clip, not for ego, for memory. Proof that even fabric, when worn with pride, could become a statement. As the sky dimmed to indigo, Langston reached a mural on the site of a community center. It hadn't been there a month ago. Now it showed three kids in hoodies, black, brown, and white, standing side by side. Above them, in bold letters, see the story, not the stereotype. He stood still, took it in, let it pierce something quiet in his chest. Not pride, not sadness, just recognition. The story had made its way beyond him. Footsteps approached behind him. A young woman, maybe 20, hesitated. Excuse me, she said. Are you Mr. Hayes? He turned, nodding. She fumbled. I just wanted to say what you did. It mattered. I work retail. I see it every day. And now, I speak up more. Langston smiled. Keep speaking. That's how we change the temperature in the room. She nodded, blinking fast, then walked away. Changed. He didn't record it, didn't post it. Some stories weren't made for algorithms. They were meant to ripple, person to person, like the quiet drop of a pebble into deep, still water. He walked further down the street, the hoodie moving with him like a second skin. Not armor, not camouflage, but clarity, a symbol of survival, of story, of silent power refusing to stay silent anymore. The streetlight flickered above him. He paused underneath it, face half in shadow, half in gold. The past behind him, the fight beside him, the future still unfolding. He didn't need applause. He didn't need followers. He just needed one more step, and then another, because behind every hoodie, there's a lesson, and his was far from finished. He crossed the street toward his car. The world buzzed around him, sirens in the distance, laughter in a nearby window, a dog barking from a balcony. Life was still messy, but for once, Langston didn't feel like he had to brace himself against it. He had walked through the fire, quietly, and came out the other side with something rare, conviction without bitterness. As he opened the door to the SUV, he looked back once more at the block, the mural, the glow of the dealership. It was all still there, changed yet familiar. Better, because truth had walked through it and hadn't backed down. Langston pulled the door shut, turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. He drove off slowly, hoodie still up, the road unwinding before him. No destination, just direction, just purpose, just power, silent, certain, steady. Because in a world that too often judges the hoodie, he had become the story. And the story walked on. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't flash his title. He didn't need to. Langston Hayes walked into that dealership wearing a hoodie and walked out wearing something more powerful. Truth. And for everyone who saw him as less, who laughed, who assumed, that truth hit harder than any speech ever could. Because here's the lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who says nothing, who watches, who listens, and then rewrites the rules. This wasn't just a story about revenge. It was about revelation. It wasn't about taking power back. It was about showing who had it all along. In a world that still judges black men by what they wear instead of who they are, Langston's story reminds us, the hoodie doesn't hide weakness. It holds resilience. It holds dignity. It holds legacy. And what we saw in Langston, we've seen in many. In the kid who gets followed at the store. In the woman whose name gets mispronounced in every interview. In the father who holds his breath every time he's pulled over, praying the cop sees the man, not the color. These stories matter because silence is not always submission. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's strength. Langston's quiet courage is not fiction. It's reflection of a reality too many live and too few acknowledge. But that's why this channel exists. Silent Power Stories is not about shouting louder. It's about listening deeper. It's about honoring the black stories that live in hoodies, in shadows, in places society overlooks, until it's too late. But we won't let them stay overlooked. Not here, not now. So if this story moved you, sit with that feeling. If it made you uncomfortable, good. That means you're awake. That means you're asking the right questions. That means change is possible. We don't need heroes in capes. We need truth tellers in hoodies. And if you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, if you've ever been told you don't belong, if you've ever had to shrink yourself just to survive a room, you're not alone. Langston didn't walk out of that dealership a legend. He walked out a mirror. And in it, we see not just him, but ourselves, our fears, our flaws, our responsibility. Now it's your turn. Don't scroll past this story. Don't let this be just another video. Be part of the change. Subscribe to this channel for more Black stories behind the hoodie. Share this video with someone who needs to see what quiet strength really looks like. Turn on the bell because the next story might be your own. And remember, don't judge the cloth. See the courage beneath. Behind every hoodie is a Black story worth telling. Let's make sure the world hears it. Stay with us. Stand with us. This is Silent Power Stories. Real stories, real voices, real impact.